call to order the Ashland Board of Commissioners regular meeting for Thursday, April 22nd, 2021. Invocation by Commissioner Clark, and we'll follow up with Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Spriggs.
Thank you. Let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for this day that you've given us. Thank you for bringing us together to make decisions for the people of the city of Ashland. Lord, help us to make those decisions good decisions and ones that are beneficial to all those who live here, work here, and come to visit. Lord, be with us as we walk through this week and keep all of our employees safe as well. In your name we pray. Amen.
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 I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
We have a motion to receive and file the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have a motion to receive and file the minutes for our regular meeting March 11th, 2021, and our regular meeting March 25th, 2021.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Hearings and reports. Start with our commissioners.
I just have a couple of notes that I'm on for the sake of the city. Ashland in Motion has hired a new director. We made that offer this week. The new director is Holly Stone, and we've also hired a director of strategic communications, and that is Elizabeth Hensley. Those two will work together to plan the events for Ashland in Motion and market those events. And Cheryl's on that board too. We're very, very excited about what the future holds. I know today that Holly and Elizabeth were getting together, and there's a meeting scheduled for Visit Ashland, Destination Ashland, and Ashland in Motion to coordinate all of those efforts and make sure that we're all we're not duplicating efforts and we're all working in our lane. So that was very good news and ready to get rolling. I know that the Ashland in Motion has submitted their event request for First Friday to happen on May the 7th. So First Friday will be back. The first one will be, we think, like First Friday Light. We're just easing back into to all of it, and I think everybody's looking forward to getting out and seeing some sort of normalcy again. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Well, happy Earth Day, first of all. So I just want one real quick comment. I was at the Planning Commission meeting the other night, and without talking about anything there, but just really proud of the citizen commission that we have there. It was an interesting meeting and one that they don't deal with a lot, but those are volunteers. They're volunteers serving the city. So I appreciated them handling that and doing what they could to help us. I appreciate all of our citizen advisory boards. It's a thankless job, but it's they're needed, and we appreciate them.
Okay. Commissioner Spriggs.
Thank you. I want to say hello to everybody, and I will add to what Commissioner Clark said, that there for our First Friday, the first one, there's a car show. So I know everybody loves that, and it'll be a big draw. I know there's some other exciting things going on. So I'm really happy that we've hired these new people, and we'll be getting back to normal. The plans they had, I think the citizens of Ashland and certainly everybody in the city will be pleasantly surprised at some of the fun and innovative things we'll be having in the city. So I'm really proud of that. And I have just one more thing. On the front page of yesterday's paper was a really nice article. Commissioner Blanton was featured in that, and it had to do with citizen input on his Facebook page about the roundabouts and the things we're doing. So it was interesting to read those comments, that what our citizens and even people who did live here and don't live here anymore, or people who never lived here and wanted to comment on. So it was interesting to read that, and I'm really looking forward to our public meetings on this issue. So having said all that, I will give it to the mayor.
Well, I want to echo the sentiments of Commissioner Blanton and Commissioner Spriggs, and we can't do our jobs as elected officials without public input. And I can't emphasize enough how we feel it's important that we hear from the public through public meetings. Many of us have been contacted over issues relating to matters of those boards. It's my belief that it's in our best interest as elected officials to withhold from public comment until we're able to make the decisions right here in front of you in public. So if you're asking me for an opinion, I try to withhold that until I hear all the evidence before me in this boardroom. So I appreciate all the input, though. Those that feel that they can't be at any of those public meetings, I encourage you to do what you've done. Email us, write letters of support or against, and make sure that's submitted to those boards for their records. With that, we'll move on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. We're going to start off this portion with Mr. Anthony Workman from Kelly, Galloway, Smith & Goolsby, who is going to present last year's audit.
Well, good afternoon. Once again, I want to thank the city for the opportunity to complete the audit for this past year and everybody's contribution. It is a large project. Finance department and every department head played a significant role, and we appreciate all their help in getting the audit completed. Now, I will go through, if everybody has their book in front of them, it's finally up to 101 pages, I believe. So,
And the record?
I think it's a record, yes, I think so. Every year it goes, you add a few more notes and it gets another page or two. So, once again, I'll just hit a few high points, won't go through every page. If at any point, if you feel like I'm rushing, if you have questions, feel free to interrupt me. It would be no problem at all. We'll start with our independent auditor's report. It is 4 pages in to the packet, which is page 1. It says, we have audited these accompanying financial statements of the city of Ashland for the year ending June 30th, 2020, and that management is responsible for these financials, and it's our responsibility to express an opinion on the financial statements. And at the bottom of the page, it has our opinion section, and it says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present in all material respects the financial position of the city as of June 30th, 2020. So it is considered to be an unmodified or a clean audit opinion. So, first section I will point out, I won't go through, but I do want to point it out to you because it does provide a good analysis of the financial statements. On page 3, the management discussion and analysis section. This section is prepared by the finance department after the financial statements have been drafted. It provides some financial highlights over the year, some analysis, some comparisons between current year and prior year. Our responsibility for this section is basically to ensure it is not misleading or it does not agree to the actual financial statements that we give an opinion on. So it is a nice read. If you go through, the finance department does a good job of presenting that analysis. The first statement I will go over begins on page 17 and continues and concludes on page 18. This is the statement of net position, which is essentially the city's balance sheet if you were a public entity or a business, essentially a balance sheet for the end of the year. It does consolidate all funds. It includes all of your general fund and all of your governmental funds under governmental activities column. The business type activity column is primarily the utility fund, but it also includes the recreation fund, the bus system, and the cemetery fund in there with it. So at the end of the year, the last line item on page 18 is total net position. The city ended with a net position of $46 million at the end of 2020. And that is essentially, like I said, if it's like a business, it'd be like the equity or the retained earnings of the city. The major liability of the city, other than, of course, the bond issues, would be these net pension liabilities and net OPEB liabilities. I think we've stressed this before in the past. At the end of this year, the total between those two are about $73 million. Now, of course, the majority of that is related to the county retirement system and for the pension liabilities and the health insurance for retirees. That's the majority of it. However, there's $7.9 million, I believe, is what the amount is related to the police and fire pension retirement system and the utility pension retirement system. That actually did go down during the year. That unfunded liability went down about $700,000 for the two cities' pension plans. Now, as you know, they have still been increasing those contribution rates for the county retirement. I think for 2020, it was frozen as part of a COVID relief response by the state. However, next year, for fiscal year 2021, it is increasing. And I believe for your hazardous employees, for your police and fire, it's going to go up to 44%. And for the non-hazardous employees, it's going to be 27%. So, and for this year, for non-hazardous, the year we actually audited, it was only 24%. So you're looking at about 3% increase for those non-hazardous employees, and about a 4 or 5% increase, because it's 39.5% for the police and fire is what was being contributed during this past year. So, the next statement I will touch on is on page 22. The statement of revenues and expenditures for the governmental funds of the city. Here's your general fund, your tax increment finance fund. It has a column for each governmental fund of the city along the top of the page. Now, for the year, pretty much every fund had a decrease in fund balance during the year. This is similar. This statement is presented similar to how your revenues and expenditures are actually budgeted. The major difference was on the general fund, or the major decrease. If you look 3 line items from the bottom, net change in fund balance, it actually went down $2.5 million. The majority of that has to deal with the property tax bills not being able to be sent out in time during the year because of the receiving the assessment. So I would anticipate property tax revenues for fiscal year 2021 probably to be double, because you'll include those 2 years worth of collections in one, actually.
So, just to be clear about that, so we deferred the property taxes, is that the right way to say it?
There is it was not deferred, but in order to be included as revenue for the year, they have to be billed and collected within 60 days after year end. And since that did not occur, there was no property tax revenue other than maybe $100,000 that was received on the prior year, including in this.
Right, so we show for fiscal year 2020, we show a loss, revenue
Yeah.
loss,
Yeah.
but then we'll show that double back.
You should show that in 2021. That should be,
Assuming everybody pays.
assuming everybody pays, exactly.
I paid mine.
Yeah.
Something else that did help during the year was the $1.5 million of COVID relief funds that were included in revenues, since the expenditures related to those for the police and fire were, the salaries were actually included in this year. So that is included in the grant income of the general fund, about 5 or 6 line items down from the revenue of $2.1 million in total there. So.
I mean, I didn't catch this previously. You said $1.5 million, will the other $500,000 be included next year?
Yes, that'll be part of next year's. So the tax increment fund had a decrease during the year of $403,000. The majority of that was related to the bond payment that was due during the year, and due to there only being about $68,000 worth of revenues. Now, hopefully, in the future, that revenue will increase. Now, I'm sure COVID, with all the shutdowns, did not help did not help out this year. So, but hopefully in the future that amount will increase to help cover those.
But just as a point of clarity, the property tax would affect that as well?
Yes, the property tax would affect that as well. There'd be a portion of that. And that's the same way on the flood wall fund. It had a decrease of $198,000. That was pretty solely all property tax revenue.
Gotcha. I just wanted to make sure I had that correct in my brain.
So the capital projects fund, the second column over to the end, during the year you expended about $4 million in capital outlay. The majority of that were the police cruisers, and there was a fire rescue vehicle and the renovations at the 16th Street Plaza. I think those were the major items that were included in that amount during the year. Let's see. Are there any questions over that so far? On page 36, again, the footnotes to the financial statements. I mentioned previously, I will not go through each one of these, but these go over the accounting policies of the city. That's used to prepare the financial statements. They are considered generally accepted accounting principles that are similar to other cities and local municipalities use. I will point out a few of the notes that may be interesting. On page 46, there's a table with a summary of the activity for capital assets of the city. I mentioned previously with the expenditures for the police cruisers and the 16th Street Plaza being included in additions. The business type activities at the second half of the page, they had a net total of about $5.7 million of capital purchases during the year. The majority of these are water line upgrades, water plant upgrades, water line replacements, but it does include, under the capital improvement line item, there's $2.3 million there. About $2 million of that are the statues, actually, on the riverfront of Vulcan events. It was recorded as a contribution, as a local contribution through the Recreation Fund for the appraised value of those whenever those were received.
And just to be clear to the public,
Thank you.
that was a gift.
Yes,
We're only recording the monetary value of the gift.
It's a pass-through, yeah.
correct,
Nobody in this building wrote a check for
correct.
the statues.
That was a contribution from, my understanding, local citizen, and that amount was the estimated replacement cost based on an appraisal that was performed
Thank you.
Thank
for
you.
that, so it was a donation.
Very good.
On page, the next page, 47, there is it starts a footnote on the retirement plans and the health insurance plans. I will not go through those. It does provide you with all the assumptions that was used and how they calculated those liabilities. I will not go through those with you today, though. Page 67, I will point this out because I found it interesting. There is close to the bottom of the page, there is a summary of the claims liability for the health insurance claims compared to between 19 and 20 comparison.
20 or 67.
It's page 67. The current year claims for 2019 were 6.5 million, but for 2020 they're about 5.2. They went down approximately 1.3 million dollars.
Wow.
Now, I would say part of that was related just to COVID and non-essential procedures being limited at that point in time. So I haven't, spoke with Michelle to see what the 2021 expenditures look like, but I would not be surprised if they had increased during the year because of that, once those procedures were allowed again.
They're actually on par with 2020 right now. We are realizing our savings from our transfer to Anthem, and claims have been less because of that. I think we're getting a deeper discount on what we're paying, and there is still some procedures that have not been done because of COVID, but our health insurance is
Good. Thank you.
Great. Let's see, on page 82, I will point this schedule out to you. There is a budget to actual schedule in detail for the general fund on page 82. It continues over on, I think, through 85, I believe. Yes, through 84. It provides the budgetary comparison, like I said, in detail by department for revenues and expenditures for the general fund. At the end of the year, the general fund actually had a, excess of revenue that received over the budgeted amount of $1.9 million. Now, that already does factor in the fact that you adjusted the budget for the loss of property tax revenue or of not being able to build those amounts, but it does not include the COVID relief grant that was received. Those are the major, and that was the major difference of the major cause of the $1.9 million excess amount. So there was one finding we had on the city, and I will go through it, starting on page 96. We have it listed, since it was related to a federal program, it's actually in 2 spots, but it is all essentially one finding. It was related to the CDBG program and the Pollard infrastructure project. I think when we reviewed some of the expenditures, we noted it appeared that a contract was signed before the final release from HUD was approved. I think I can't remember what the exact timing difference of that was, but other than that timing difference, the project did seem to be allowable. But HUD does have specific requirements and specific steps that you have to go through in order to utilize that funding. One of them is to receive that final approval on the I think it was an environmental review, that final approval. Now, my understanding is that management has responded to that finding. It's my understanding that they're working with HUD to see if there is any corrective action that needs to be taking place, and I believe that that is included in with management's response on that page. Like I said, that is pretty much the only finding we had this year. It is reported in 2 spots since it was related to a federal program. But that was essentially it. Now, there are some additional letters. I'm not sure if you have those included as well. They do, okay.
We've got them.
One is, includes a section called significant audit matters. This would be if we had any, in this letter, if we had any disagreements, major disagreements with management that we couldn't resolve or anything like that, we'd report it. We did not have anything like that. If there was any past audit adjustments, it would be attached, and there was a small one that we did not feel like needed to be made, so it is included in that schedule. There's another one, a letter here that we call our management comment letter, and it's fairly small, has 2 paragraphs on the front of the letter. These were items that we didn't consider to be significant to require to be included in the report as a finding, but more like recommendations and just other items we know that we reported to management. One was on minority business loans. We felt that the documentation to ensure compliance with those loans was maybe beefed up a little bit. Yeah, I guess if that's a good term to use, but and actually the file make sure the jobs were actually created as part of those loans. They did have documentation in there. We just felt like it could be stronger, and so that's why we were making that recommendation. And the other items was on the garage inventory, on errors noted during the audit. There was an improvement over last year, but there were still just some small issues, and I believe that they were trying to correct with doing cycle counts and doing quarterly counts to make sure those, so at the end of the year, there's not a large adjustment that is required. So those, and then I believe if there is another letter included separately. It's a report on agreed upon procedures. We're required, as part of Section 8, the city is required to make an online submission through HUD with the financial information for the Section 8 program, and that's basically the report on those procedures, essentially stating that the report submitted to HUD is the same as what's included as in this audit report. And that's what that letter states. Does anybody have any questions or concerns I can address?
While everyone's looking, and because I can't stand awkward silence, just thank you for this, and the finance and everybody who had a hand in preparing the audit and providing us with this much-needed information. I appreciate that.
We appreciate the opportunity.
I want to echo that and thank Michelle and Tony and the entire finance department, and of course your company always does a good job, so thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the first things, I think meeting with Tony and Michelle was one of the first things I did when I decided to try this, and jump in our budget and try to learn through everything, and because I thought that's what I would need to do to get elected. But that, so I would just tell everybody, I mean, probably a lot of people I mean, it's financial talk, so a lot of people who watch this meeting probably, don't really listen to every detail, but there's no more visible tool of transparency than what we just did.
Right.
And you're an independent auditor who just verified that what our work through our budget is. Now, obviously, there's always going to be things that we can improve on, and we'll obviously look at that. But great job, Tony and Michelle. Appreciate you all. Appreciate you, city manager as well. So great job. This was the fiscal year of 2020.
Correct.
And so we'll do the same thing next year. So.
Yeah, and I thought the management comments were very well taken, and it looks good that we're taking actions to even improve further the situations that were mentioned.
We have had the inventory issue on multiple audits, as you commented, and, it is very important to us to manage our assets properly. And I appreciate the comments from the city manager and his staff and our financial department on what they're doing to recognize if there's a problem, addressing the problem, and then following up with us to make sure that problem has been corrected, because ultimately everyone sitting up here is responsible. We have the ultimate responsibility, and it's imperative that we have the public's trust when it comes to their money. And I can't thank you all enough for your audit.
Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity and everyone's help, so, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to be a little bit repetitive on some of the things the mayor and commissioner said, but this audit and the ones I've witnessed since I've been here are so thorough. They're so professional. It's just really a fantastic product. I really enjoy working with Kelly Galloway, but specifically with Mr. Workman. He's just the epitome of professionalism, and I think I could say that pretty confidently. I could speak for Michelle and Tony on that. Finance goes through two dominant cycles through the year, audit and budget, and it just depends on the time of the year. The first thing out of finance's mouth is, when we do something, it's audit or budget, because that's what really drives the train that makes this machine go. And whoever made the comment about full transparency, I mean, 100-page plus document that if you have the time to go through this, you're going to see a lot. Mayor, to your point on the inventory, you nailed it. I think this is a continuing work in progress. We never cross the victory line on this, because it's continuing every time a part goes in or out, and the accountability of it. I don't want to diminish the finding at all, or the comment at all. It is administrative in nature, and I do want to reiterate, they are doing continued 10% inventories every month and quarterly 100% inventories, which has not been done in the past. So just going through it, we've had a turnover of personnel down there, which has gone incredibly smoothly. So a lot of different factors, but I think from where we were, a couple years ago, we're in much better shape, and there's a lot of hands in that, not the least of which is finance. And also the rest of the staff, thanks for the information that they provide to finance in order to make this process happen, is also critical, and it's critical their understanding of the directorates and all the subordinate sections, the subsections that are there. So again, Anthony, thank you, and Kelly Gould for all you've done. A couple other comments. Apologize for the static. We're going to get that fixed as soon as we can. I know it's very distracting. A couple other things. Recycling bid. I told you that we were working on that. I did a final review of it last night and found some other errors. We should have that bid out in a matter of a couple of days to do the recycle center. But there's some language in there that I didn't agree with that we needed to adjust to get that more precise. I also want to highlight that we did expend the rest of this fiscal year's paving with a couple of projects. The parking lot on Greenup Avenue, which Michelle's going to pull a picture up. This is a view towards Greenup. Next. The structure you see there is where we're going to put dumpsters, both 3 city dumpsters and also a variety of pull cart dumpsters in there that the businesses and private entities downtown can use. Having the dumpsters in the middle of a parking lot, it's just not very aesthetically pleasing. If you recall, that's where the art alley is, and so just having a better look down there and having that covered. We are going to put some structural, some plywood on the outside, and then that's going to be covered with some artistic type material, probably vinyl or something along those lines. So it's really going to complement what's going on in the art alley. And that project was basically done by our man Lawrence. So for what we're paying for that and what we would have contracted out on that is a steal for us, and not a steal, but a great bargain. Next slide.
Is that the old Stars parking lot?
What you're looking at, yes, the building directly behind that is the G.C. Murphy. So you're looking south from that parking lot on that angle.
So who's using that?
Right now, the one trash can that's in there is being used by EB. That other trash can is not a city trash can. It was inadvertently placed there. That'll be removed. I want to convince the person that's using that to go with city sanitation because we have the capacity to do that. That will be enclosed again, and then we'll have swing doors on the front.
So we're offering sanitation services to businesses?
We are, and have been.
It's great.
And then another thing is that when we open up the recycle point, they will then have access to utilize our recycling point, which I think would be a environmentally positive thing for businesses. Just another view of that area. Next, the city team striped that.
Can anybody get in there?
No, it's going to be locked. So we have had problems down there with people dumping when there were open trash cans, and I mean, to be honest, I'm glad they used those versus the ground, but people are paying for that. There's one business that's very interested in utilizing that because they're going to be able to expand their business space down in that area by not having trash cans in their back area.
Well, are they paying for it?
Pardon?
Who's paying for it? Are the merchants that are using it paying for it?
Yes.
Taken away?
Yes. Okay.
That's sorry.
You're fine, go ahead.
I walk the dog through there every day, probably as many times as I need to every day, and to really get the idea that you have to see it before also, because it's the before, and I've probably got a few before pictures.
Got a
but-
before shot on it?
I was trying to get those, I just didn't get them in time. Do we have a shot of the alley also?
On a side note, it's probably important when we have staff, when we have scheduled paving to be done, that staff, as a way of checking the work of our contractors, document it and photograph anyways.
They do.
So
I just wasn't able to get, if you remember a year and a half ago when we did the procurement, all those contracts that we have contracted out
So
have
we do now have
post-analysis.
Great,
Absolutely.
okay.
That's done, and it's part of, when we evaluate bids, that's part of the bidding process.
Because to Commissioner Bland's point, it definitely is an improvement.
For sure.
And the alleyway, on a side matter, behind Desco, huge improvement.
Yes.
And as a rule of thumb, Mayor, we don't pave alleys. The reason we did this alley is because there's a dramatic increase in foot traffic with the art alley, am I calling it that right?
I think so.
Yeah, the art alley. But there's a significant increase of foot traffic there, which is a great thing, and it was a safety issue down there. And that, what you just described between Desco and Burger King, really has become much more than an alley. It's a real key transportation juncture for us, and that was equally in terrible shape and had to be redone.
We may want to revisit the policy then that we don't pave alleyways in our downtown, noting the increased importance of them.
Well, if you think about, we've got the proposals to take Winchester's 2 lanes.
Right.
You're going to have to use the alleys for delivery. You're going to have to, there's going to be a lot more traffic in the alleys. And so I think we need to be cognizant of that as we progress through this plan.
I agree, and it's currently done on a case-by-case basis. Obviously, with what we've done,
Sure.
it's not a hard stop on it, so.
Yeah.
Most definitely what Commissioner Clark brought up is a definite consideration, because those alternate routes for supplying those businesses on Winchester is going to be a bigger factor than it is right now with the 4
We're
lane.
absolutely going to have to look at them. Another point I want to make about the trash cans being enclosed on the parking lot, and it was a conversation that we had in Destination Ashland. I was under the impression, falsely, that it was actually ordinance that dumpsters had to be enclosed. That is not true. It's not in our ordinance. Catherine looked at it. She's tried to find it everywhere. It is not. We do not require dumpsters to be enclosed. In the future, I'd like to look at setting a date that, a year and a half in the future.
Phase in, maybe?
Yeah, that we do require that for the same purpose of, if you look everywhere, there are dumpsters out that people who do not pay for those dumpsters have access to that are dumping in them. I get calls, consistently, Williams Avenue Way, there's a dumpster that sits out that is not enclosed, and people drive down there all the time and dump, and all the trash blows out of the dumpster. Like, I get that call every other week.
Our business has an enclosed dumpster, and they're still in it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but something to
But
think
visually, I
about.
think,
Well, and in addition, they're much more attractive.
Yes,
When they're enclosed
exactly.
nicely, like some of our businesses.
and it's true, when there is wind and stuff blows out of them,
Yeah.
it's a disaster.
And Commissioner, to your point, when this is final and you see the decorations that are on the side, we've taken something that really looked pretty rotten, and it's now a positive.
Great.
And you see that in other communities. I know we saw an example of that of an electrical box in downtown Pikeville that they just couldn't move, and they put some historic art around it. It just, it blended in very nicely, and that was our goal when we started on this. So again, we had good assets. We've got Lawrence Humphrey, who does fantastic work. You look at that, it's going to be hard for somebody to knock that down. That's built like a tank.
That'd be a $750,000 project if we bid it out, it seems like.
Maybe 749. But, and then the last thing, I just want to bring your attention, the county clerk reached out to me last night and expressed the fact that they are going to be moving the clerk's office from on Broadway Square, and they are looking at trying to get some additional parking on Carter Avenue. So I encouraged him to give us the precise details of that so we could take that to the traffic task force. But I want to make sure that you all are aware of that. Mayor, Commissioners, unless you have anything else, that concludes my report.
When did they say we're going to do that?
I don't have the details. All I've heard is scuttlebutt up to this point, so I've asked the county clerk to give me the precise details that they're looking for, timeline, et cetera, and the amount of spaces.
So, City Manager, I don't mean to spring something on you, but since you mentioned electrical box, what about that electrical box by the bridge? That's that's awful.
We're working that. We're just waiting on Dave Young to get the sign up. We've been working diligently with him to get that up. And that is something we're going to address there. Also, seeing when Sonic comes in, what latitude we're going to have on angles of that. But I agree with you, it's an eyesore when you look at it from Winchester. We'll come up with something similar, or my prediction is that we'll come up with something similar like this that will be aesthetically pleasing and won't jolt out. Also, if you've noticed, there's a big ugly rusted pole on the corner of 13th right before you go up the bridge. That was a necessity prior. We do have an electrical box on the bottom, but Streets Department is cutting that off today so that it's not that massive eyesore
Yeah.
there.
So is there a possibility of moving that box down below where it is now on that exit from the bridge?
It would
No way
likely
to
be
move
cost
it?
prohibitive. It's
Too bad that
massive.
it's sitting right there. I mean, it's just, yeah. Okay.
That's all I had. Thank you.
All right, now the part of our meeting where there's an opportunity for public participation for items not listed on the agenda. Is there anyone present? Much to my surprise, we move on then.
Really?
Yep.
Looking forward to it.
Now I'm giggly.
Old business, and no Matt. No glasses.
No glasses. It'd be rough going.
All right.
All right, we ready for old business? Item A, second reading and final adoption of an ordinance entitled an ordinance, the City of Ashland, Kentucky, granting a 2.9% consumer price index increase retroactive to July 1, 2020 to eligible employees in the City of Ashland.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I'm just thrilled that we can do
Yeah.
this. That's all I want to
We
say
happy
about
about
it.
that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Item B, second reading and final adoption of an ordinance entitled an ordinance of the City of Ashland, Kentucky, amending the salary chart of the Policies and Procedures Compensation Plan and Classification Plan as adopted by ordinance number 51, series of 2017, as previously amended.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
The consent agenda, a resolution of the City of Ashland, Kentucky adopting, authorizing, and approving the course of action presented by the city manager on the items appearing on the consent agenda for the regular meeting of the Board of City Commissioners of April 22nd, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, does anybody know why the cost of salt went up $28 a ton?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I had, we lived a salt nightmare. It was not just,
The salt life, but not the kind of.
it was a no salt life.
Yeah.
That's what it was. So we have a huge salt stockpile beside the plant in Portland, where I'm at. It's not ours. It's like another company that sells it. I mean, when I say huge, I mean literally the size of probably 2 city blocks. And that salt dwindled down within, when the storms happened, within probably a week and a half, it was gone. And so they were selling it out. So there was definitely an issue, and we at the plant had an issue finding it for several days when the storms first happened. And it's because when you have storms like that, I mean, what do we have, 3 major storms in a week?
Yeah, 21 days.
Yeah, supply chains, especially right now, cannot respond to that. After-
So it's supply and demand, okay.
The only
A
other.
lot.
The only other issue I wanted to comment on was the amount of the change order for the granite inliner. You've mentioned it in the past, the reason for the increase. It is pretty significant, but it also, we had found significant deficiencies in the sewer system causing us to make amendments to add services needed to repair the line. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Mayor. You're also going to see an adjustment in new business. As they are, we did our best estimates on the status of those lines, but as the company and our team is going through and analyzing those lines, we realize there are some that are in just much worse shape than we had hoped for, and they have to be repaired. The inliner is the least disruptive way of going about that, and I was going to make another comment on this later, but we just discovered another 85 feet that's down near the city garage that if we don't address, you're going to see it as a change order in the upcoming next commission meeting for another change. If we don't address that with a UV technology, we're going to have to dig that up, which will be also more expensive. So these lines are on, some of them are on the verge of collapse, and they have to be dealt with.
What is the measures we're taking? Are these new measures we're taking to identify susceptible sewer lines?
At this point, I would call this reactive, frankly. I've learned that we do, our camera capabilities are limited, and the camera technology that we have is about 20 years old. Coincidentally, I was just talking to Steve and Bruce Worthington, who's the acting utilities director with Mark on this week. Our camera system is about 20 years old. It breaks down quite a bit. It's not as capable. 20 years of technology would give us a lot more capabilities. It's something we have in the budget. I haven't talked to Tony Michelle yet about whether we can afford it. But I think to where you're going to be more proactive, we need to get improved camera capabilities and then being proactive about checking across the system to determine where these lines begin failing before they become a crisis. And we're in a crisis mode on some of these at this point.
Yeah, we've made all the efforts on water lines and identifying water lines, obviously, and we've made great improvements in that area, but let's not forget about sewer as well. And
Absolutely.
Is there a map somewhere of all these lines?
We do have GIS data.
I'm sorry?
We do have GIS data, the computerized data that shows layers of water lines, sewer lines across the city. We maintain that in the engineering department.
Okay.
And also, since you brought it up, Commissioner, as we make water line repairs, for example, or replacements, the crews have iPads. They take photos of before, they take photos of the after. I've discussed this a couple of years ago. Previously, when this was all done manually, we had very precise records. And the city, and I think the nation fairly, went through this period of where it just wasn't tracked as efficiently as it should have been. And then we moved into the computerized information where the cities had a GIS person dedicated to GIS for at least since I've been here, maybe a couple of years before then. And importing that data into the computerized system is critical. So when they do repairs and upgrades, taking those photos of what is where is critical to making sure that when they do future repairs, they know what they're dealing with before they dig into the ground.
Makes sense. Sure.
Yeah, you remember
Yeah.
several years ago in the water crisis, a while back.
Oh, yeah.
That one of the major issues was we
didn't
didn't
know
know
where
where we
anything
could turn
was.
things on
Yeah.
and off.
The
And I
valves.
think we've we've
Fixed
made
it.
great strides in fixing that.
Yeah, that's so important. I'm glad to hear it.
It's 300 miles of pipe, and I think to your point, the valving, water distribution does have a plan. You know the progress we've made just on fire hydrants. I mean, the fire hydrants were down to a handful that were either waiting parts on or something like that. We were up to 40 or 50 out of the 2,000, I think that we had, or 1,500, don't quote me on that number. So again, we're definitely making progress there. It's an elephant one bite at a time. I feel much better personally and professionally about where we're at, both in wastewater, Mayor, and also water, as you mentioned, but it's ongoing. My big talking point on this is trying to get proactive on these.
Yes.
So we are reacting. This is necessary. Of course, we wouldn't bring anything that wasn't necessary before you all, but to the point of being proactive and getting some of those tools that will allow us to do it. We've got the manpower. I mean, there's not an issue when we get hired up to full strength. We have the manpower to do that, so it's definitely not a manpower issue.
Okay. Any other matters to discuss on the consent agenda? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any
I have
opposed?
to abstain because of number 5. housing
One
authority.
abstention? Okay. No opposed? All right, moving on.
New business, item A, first reading and approval of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City of Ashland, Kentucky, authorizing and directing the mayor to submit the program year 2021 action plan for a community development block grant to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and upon acceptance of said application from HUD, to execute on behalf of the City of Ashland an agreement with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to enable the city to undertake these activities and/or any and all documents associated with the grant submittal.
So moved.
Second.
Sorry.
That's your up.
Real quick, just a quick run-through, because this is a big one. I mean,
Yeah.
we're proud of this program, and we're proud of our staff, because one of the first things I learned about it is how difficult it is to handle the administrative part of this. It's not just, you're not just handed money, right? There's a whole part of it that has to be administered. So, there's an action plan that's developed. I think it's 84 pages is our action plan for this year, and there's an action plan in all the previous years. So that action plan, I would really encourage people, if you want to learn about CDBG and what it is and how it impacts the city, because it impacts a lot of citizens, read that action plan, participate if you can in the public comments when we offer those, because this is an extremely important plan for the city, and one that we haven't always talked a lot about in this capacity, I don't think. So it's important to put this out there, let people know that, yes, there's an action plan, yes, that we solicit public comment for that. You have an opportunity to see the plan and to speak on the plan if you'd like. So I think it's important to note that before we.
Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
an important point you made, and people need to know that that's with the federal government. Hence the huge amount of responsibility in reporting and action plans, et cetera, so.
And the fact that we're an entitlement city, we can't emphasize enough how important that is for us, because we don't have to compete for dollars in the same way smaller communities do. But it also comes with the importance of us making sure we're doing everything by the book so that we can continue to have this moving forward. And I do agree with Commissioner Blanton and Commissioner Spriggs. It's a critical part
Absolutely.
of what we offer as government. You know, a lot of times people say government can improve your life, but in this instance, a lot of these programs do improve the lives of our citizens. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And I abstain.
Item B, first reading and approval of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City of Ashland, Kentucky, adopting the 2020 to 2024 City of Ashland Community Development Block Grant Consolidated Plan and the 2020 Action Plan for the Department of Community and Economic Development, and repealing ordinance number 47, series of 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I abstain.
Item C, first reading and approval of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City of Ashland, Kentucky, authorizing and directing the mayor to execute an access agreement between the City of Ashland, Kentucky and River Metals Recycling LLC, allowing the City of Ashland access to a portion of property owned by RMR for the purpose of collecting samples and investigating the area for future expansion of the city's wastewater treatment plant.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Not at this time.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Item D, first reading and approval of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance to the City of Ashland, Kentucky authorizing and directing the mayor to execute a contract between the City of Ashland and Morton Salt Inc. for the purchase of approximately 750 tons of treated rock salt at $90.50 per ton delivered for the Department of Public Services Division of Streets.
So moved.
Second.
It was in there, it was fine. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Item E, first reading and approval of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance to the City of Ashland, Kentucky authorizing and directing the mayor to execute an agreement between the City of Ashland, Kentucky and People's Insurance Agency, LLC, to provide property and casualty insurance broker agent placement services from July 1st, 2021 to June 30, 2022, in the amount of $14,000 and authorizing payment of the same.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Item F, first reading and approval of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance to the City of Ashland, Kentucky authorizing and approving change order number 3 between the City of Ashland, Kentucky and Granite Inlayer LLC, increasing the contract in the amount of $30,750, adding a 250 linear foot section of 24-inch sanitary sewer line beneath US 23 at Blackburn Avenue at 45th Street, which was determined to be failing in structural condition.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Item G, first reading and approval of an ordinance titled, an ordinance to the City of Ashland, Kentucky adopting the revised job description for the position of Fleet Maintenance Solid Waste Superintendent, adopting the revised job description for the position of Mechanic 1, 2, and 3, deleting the position of Mechanic Supervisor, adding one additional Mechanic 1, 2, and 3, all in the Department of Public Services, deleting the position of Secretary 1, 2 in the Department of Police, and adopting the amended authorized positions list of the Policies and Procedures Compensation Plan and Classification Plan as adopted by Ordinance Number 51, Series of 2017, as previously amended.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Item H, first reading and approval of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance to the City of Ashland, Kentucky authorizing and directing the mayor to execute an amended agreed order between the City of Ashland, Kentucky and the Commonwealth of Kentucky Energy and Environmental Cabinet Division of Enforcement, extending certain deadlines contained in the agreed order, adopted by Ordinance Number 115, Series of 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Just for the public's consumption, the reason we requested the extended deadline.
We specifically had two last items that we needed to close out the agreed order with the state. That's a confirmation of the water treatment plant can meet the design capability of 24 million gallons. We can't do that until the SCADA system is entirely in place, and the state understands that. Frankly, they're applauding us on the efforts that have been made there with the water treatment plant. And also, as you all recall, we've dedicated money for Blue Water to do the quality and capacity, or quality study, which they're in the process of doing. So again,
And that complements what they're already asking us to do.
exactly.
Yeah.
They're very pleased with this, and the timelines we knew would be, we probably iterate on when we originally signed the agreed order, so nobody's blanking on this, and the
Great.
state's very happy with where we're moving.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Item I, first reading and approval of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance to the City of Ashland, Kentucky, authorizing and directing the mayor to execute a contract between the City of Ashland and Rumpke of Kentucky, Inc. for the removal and disposition of sludge from the City of Ashland wastewater treatment plant and water treatment plant for a period of 1 year in the amount of $264,499.20 for the Department of Utilities.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I, for one, feel like we talk an awful lot about sludge.
Yeah.
Seems like a constant theme.
We got the sludge.
Yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Item J, first reading and approval of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance, the City of Ashland, Kentucky, repealing ordinance number 155, series of 2007, as amended by ordinance number 62, series of 2013, and continuing an occupational license fee to be charged to those parties who practice a business, trade, or profession within the Ashland City corporate limits, including employees, setting the fee to be charged, identifying the compensation which is subject to the fee, establishing withholding, filing, and payment responsibilities, providing for a net profit fee with payment and reporting responsibilities for business, setting forth enforcement provisions, providing for confidentiality of records filed with the city, and creating a penalty for the violation of the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Can you expound on this modification?
Yeah, there were basically three things. One, as previously discussed, was to make the due date of the occupational license in the city correspond with the federal date, so if any time the federal dates changed, ours would automatically change. Second was, there'd been some, I won't say, maybe dispute's the right word, but a question about whether or not this applied to capital gains in the business sense, sale of a business or business assets, and we changed the definition to clarify that capital gains from the sale of a business or principally all of the business assets are subject to this. And third, there was just a new statute passed in the last legislature which provides that when there is a request for a refund of an occupational or net profits return based on allocation of services or employment between different taxing districts, that the two taxing districts can share information to make sure, in other words, somebody's not playing you by saying, hey, we only did 20% of our business in Ashland, and then telling the other place, we only did 20% of our business here, 8% there. So it allows that confidential information to be shared between taxing districts in the event of those kinds of situations.
Okay.
So that's the three things.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Item K, first reading and approval of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City of Ashland, Kentucky authorizing and directing the mayor to execute a contract between the City of Ashland, Kentucky and Guy's Flooring LLC for all labor and material for the Shelter of Hope Flooring Project in the amount of $41,870.40 for the Department of Community and Economic Development to be paid from Community Development Block Grant funds.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Item L, first reading and approval of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City of Ashland, Kentucky authorizing and approving Phase 7 of the Glaylow of Ashland LLC apartments and authorizing and directing the mayor to execute the Phase 7 approval regarding the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Section 8 project-based voucher program for the Department of Community and Economic Development.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in
This contract is 15 years? Am I reading that right?
Yes.
It's $39,000 a month? Every month for 15 years? Okay.
Yeah, I think that may have started before you were here, Commissioner Spriggs. That's basically a financing mechanism for the multi-million-dollar improvements that were made there, where the city is committed a certain number of our voucher program people will be put in those apartments. And so that allows the development to, part of the borrowing money, they secure it with that pledge from the city.
Let me ask a question while we're on this topic. We're looking at a potential, maybe in September, of knowing what the census will be. Will the potential of a reduction in population adversely impact the amount allocated for HUD?
Top of my head, Mayor, I'll check. We'll find out.
Lorraine's back
It's a
there.
great question.
I'm sorry, what was?
For your assisted housing funds, it's not based on census. It's based on how many families we actually house in units. And over the last 2 years, we've increased by 200,000. We're at like 3.1 million that we're bringing in per year right now. So as long as we keep leasing at the same rate, it will not be affected by the census.
Our leasing rate has to be 100%, right? Because we have like a huge line of people trying to get on HUD.
That's complicated. We're able to lease up to 616 units, but that's only based on when we have the funding for those units.
Sure.
And we will never hit 616. We're basically using all of our funds at this point. That's why you have a longer waiting list.
So that, how many people currently are waiting, estimate?
198.
Oh, wow.
So So we have 198 families we can't serve.
Where are they living now? I mean, all over the place?
Correct.
Okay.
So the need for low-income housing is important.
That's what I was-
Restate
that was-
But, and the importance of GLALO is, you have multiple waiting lists as well. GLALO's waiting list right now, we know that they have 3-bedroom units that are becoming available that people have not applied for. So this is important to keep people housed. We just have to
Sure.
get the information out that these units are coming available.
And our funding will depend a lot on Congress, how they fund
Ye-
HUD.
Right.
Which they've been funding at a higher rate with work years and stuff.
Okay.
I have one question, and I don't know if anybody knows the answer to this. How many phases is this project? Because I feel like we vote on this every meeting.
Yeah, I know.
That and sludge.
And we're meeting again in the morning.
In the morning.
Don't hold me to this, but I believe it's 8.
Yeah.
8?
Yes.
So we're almost there.
We can see the finish line.
Thank you. I was just curious.
Mayor, Commissioners, one other thing I wanted to point out is Lorraine just casually threw in the increase of the houses that are being offered. That's
You
still
mean rooms, bedrooms? You mean bedrooms?
the amount that we can offer to the public.
Oh.
I'd be remiss not to say they're doing that with the staff they have, and it's more management for them to do, and it's probably an area that we need to look at and say, hey, do we need other management or other assets in there to help them manage this effectively?
Yeah, because I've had people reach out to me saying that by appointment only has been difficult for them on a budget, and they would appreciate the opportunity, at least maybe one day a week, to even being able to not have to make an appointment, just like you would at any other business.
We're on
Just
the
being able to
nice,
come in.
we're on the nice edge, and I think a lot of those procedures that we put into place is because of limited manpower on it. So it's a good thing that we've increased our capability to serve the citizens, but at the same time, we haven't seen that reciprocated in manpower. So it's just something we need to analyze and look at to provide better customer service.
Okay.
So the constraint, why we have 198 families is because of the funding? Is funding is a constraint or capacity?
Probably both.
The capacity's not going to be there without the funding, right? So.
Right.
She adds more to the program as she gets money available.
Okay.
So what happens if the federal government says we're not going to do this anymore? We're on the hook for 15, if my math's right, that's $75 million over 15 years. What happens if they say, we're not going to pay this or pay this much, but we've got this contract?
The contract isn't guaranteeing our funds, it's guaranteeing the federal government HUD funds that are made available to school
Pass-through.
districts.
Okay.
Yeah,
all
it's
right.
just a pass-through.
Okay. All right, just want to make sure.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Item M, the mayor requests concurrence of the Board of Commissioners on the appointment of Bernard Onan to the Ashland Planning Commission to fill an unexpired term expiring on January 1, 2023.
Are we sure Bernard still wants to? I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I haven't checked with him, but
I'm
he,
sure he does.
I mentioned it to him, he was thrilled.
he'll probably need some Pepto-Bismol for the next meeting. Yeah.
A few people that I didn't think from the other night is our city employees. So Jim Moore, Andrew Wheeler, Catherine Nutt-Seeger did a magnificent job in that meeting. It really did. So I appreciate you all too.
Motion.
Okay,
Did you make a motion?
So moved.
all right.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Item N is any other new business.
City manager, can you?
No new business.
Okay.
I have something I just want to ask about. While I was driving down here today, I noticed there's orange paint hieroglyphic-looking things on the sidewalk at
square.
Broadway
Yes.
and on the street. Don't tell me they're going to dig that up for something.
Oh, there's big orange marks all on the
big orange,
sidewalk
yeah.
and coming out into the street.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh.
but is there a plan to dig that up, or is somebody just marking it to know where it is?
There is a fiber optic project that has been discussed with land route working downtown, the downtown area. As a requirement, they are required to ask utilities in the planning of that to mark the utility. And utilities are required to make marks so that
But that's not to say that we're going to allow that to happen at that location, because
Well,
it's our easement.
It looks awful, and
Will
there's a
those
lot
marks
of
go
it.
away? Okay, great.
Yeah, I'm like,
They put them in the art alley also a while back, and then they went away.
I thought the marks were part of the art alley, that we an extension, but
that's in modern, well,
Yeah,
that's hieroglyphics, I call them hieroglyphics.
You'll see those from time to time, a lot of places, from the gas company, or the
Oh, yeah.
Kentucky Power,
Yeah, you
Market,
mark
or
all the
whoever.
time, you know, the
It was just startling because we just did that,
Yeah.
and there it was. I'm like, oh my gosh, are they going to be
Well,
digging
Mr.
up?
Cole's been in conversation with them, and I think has indicated to him that
there's no chance.
we're amenable to finding an appropriate route for him, but it's not down Winchester. Is that fair to say, Steve?
They're required to mark within certain limits.
On the roundabout.
So sometimes that area is outside of the intended area for the installation along to other areas. I don't think there's any plan to dig through Broadway Square, right?
Okay.
That would be-
Yeah, no.
That's good then.
That would be resistant to the ultimate level.
We could put a underground parking garage there.
Yeah.
Well, with First Friday coming up, I was kind of thinking, there you go.
Yeah.
It looks to everybody like we're going to be digging that up.
Let me,
Just tell us modern art.
while we're
It's
talking about
hieroglyphics, no, it's old art.
sidewalks and things like that, one of the things I've noticed downtown, commissioners, is we do have a lot of new sidewalks, but we also have a lot of old sidewalks. And I'd like for us to look at pressure washing
Yeah.
some of the older sidewalks, and maybe change the shade of them a little bit without us having to spend a lot of money, and it would improve the look
Clean it up.
and clean it up.
We do that periodically, don't we?
Yeah.
All of downtown from 13th to 19th was pressure washed last year. I do have some before and after pictures of that.
I would say, and some areas may need continual, I know some of our restaurants, sidewalks by the restaurants look pretty rough. If you remember where you used to have your
You could slide
shop.
from one end of the corner to the other
Yeah, and I
with
don't,
grease.
and that may also be an issue where we need to probably touch base with the restaurants and property owners that have a leaking issue, because there's definitely some discoloration and potential hazardous issues, slipping and sliding on grease specifically is what I noted. But, one of our efforts, we all want this downtown to look as good as possible and continue to make efforts, and I appreciate the efforts so far being made. I think a lot of paint and some flowers make a huge difference in downtown.
Especially in those boxes that are around the trees, if
Yeah.
we could get somebody who's interested in joining us to pretty that up a bit.
And it is Earth Day, as Commissioner Morgan mentioned,
Earth
so
Day.
as much as we can do to support you and the staff to get some of our downtown hotspots spruced up, we will do so. We do have some organizations that have stepped up in the past. We don't want to wear them out if we don't have to, because we do have resources here now, thank goodness, to an uptick in how our budget forecast looks, but we need to make sure that continues to be a focus, I think.
Mr. Mayor, if you look at Community Trust Bank, what they do every year with their flowers, it's just beautiful. I wish we had that all over the place.
Yeah.
I think
They do a great job.
as part of that conversation, Commissioner, that, you and I both are involved in Ashland in Motion, and the mission of that organization is to engage the business owners in the downtown
that would be
corridor.
great.
And It might be a good,
I think that's a good
Have a
idea,
little
Commissioner.
contest or
Yeah,
something.
and that,
just
part
to
of that, I
use
think,
that
was brought up
organization for what it's
in
needed.
the meeting with Roger Brooks. I think that was part of his emphasis, was to make sure that not only we as a city are taking ownership, but they themselves feel
That's
that
right.
they're a part of it as well.
Agreed. I have one more thing that I forgot.
Sure.
You mentioned Earth Day. Saturday, May the 1st in Central Park from 8 o'clock until they're gone. Kentucky Power, the city's helping as well, and ACTC will be passing out tree seedlings.
Is this Arbor Day?
Well, isn't today? Today's
No,
Earth
no.
Day.
Today's Earth Day.
But I don't know.
Arbor Day.
I don't know. But anyway, we're giving out trees.
Okay.
So come pick up your trees.
What kind you having this year?
I don't remember.
I
should
posted,
know
there was-
that. I've
yeah.
shared it. The only one that I can remember was a Washington hawthorn, because we talked about what a crazy kind of tree that
Yeah,
was.
yep.
But we're giving those, there's 4 different species that we'll be giving out, so stop by and see us. Some of our forestry crew will be there as well if you have questions about the trees, about where they need to be planted and all that sort of stuff.
Great, thank you. Okay, I guess we need a motion to recess this meeting until 8:30 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Correct.
So moved.
We have a couple of items time sensitive to take.
Okay. I have what-
Second.
Second, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so I guess we
We're recessed until tomorrow morning at 8:30
recess
a.m.
until tomorrow at 8:30. Thank you, everyone.